This is the Koenigsegg Gemera, and it's a hypercar like all Koenigsegg models, except this one has a twist. It has 4 seats. It also has 1,700 horsepower. This is your chance to do 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds with your whole family on board. And today, I'm going to review it. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era. We've had some amazing sales recently on Cars and Bids, including this Chevy Camaro Z28 2015 model Gorgeous, which sold for $54,000, this 2014 BMW M5 Competition, which sold for over $44,000, and this 96 Chevy Impala SS with low mileage, which sold for just under $20,000. If you're looking to sell your cool car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the place to do it to get the most views and bids and money for your cool car. And if you're looking to buy a cool car, check out Cars and Bids. We have great selection, daily auctions at carsandbids.com. I've borrowed this Gemera from the 277.9 mile an hour Ghost Squadron experience here at South Coast Plaza in Orange County in Southern California. This is like a Koenigsegg pop-up experience where you can come and check out Koenigsegg vehicles, such as this one, only at the 277.9 mile per hour Ghost Squadron experience at South Coast Plaza. Thank you also to Koenigsegg Newport Beach for helping to set this up. Koenigsegg Newport Beach is, of course, the Koenigsegg dealer here in Newport Beach in Southern California for all of your Southern California Koenigsegg needs. So let's talk Gemera. This is a pre-production model, but Koenigsegg revealed it about a year ago, and they're working quickly to make the real thing production ready. And the real thing will be amazing. 1,700 horsepower, 2,600 pound-feet of torque. It has all-wheel drive, all-wheel steering, and it'll do 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. And it has 4 seats. 4 seats is a big deal because nobody has ever tried to make anything like this for families ever before. When this goes on sale, hopefully later this year or next, it will be the most powerful 4-seat car ever made, and probably the most expensive too. It doesn't have 4 doors, but all 4 seats are easily accessible thanks to a neat trick that I'll show you. And I'll show you everything else too. Now this is a pre-production model, like I said, so I can't drive it yet, but I can show you all of the quirks and features, or at least as many quirks and features as I possibly can on the newest and most highly anticipated new Koenigsegg. So let's get started. All right, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the Gemera with one of its very coolest quirks, and that would be just getting inside and opening up the doors. You walk up to the car with your little Koenigsegg key fob, you press the door button, and then this happens. The door raises up. You can see it. It looks absolutely amazing when it happens. Take another look. This is the door of the Gemera going up to open itself up so that people can climb inside. And of course, it's the same deal on the driver's side as well. You want to climb in on the driver's side, the door can open up to allow you to climb in, and then this is how the car looks when both doors are open. It looks incredibly cool, like a hypercar should, but you don't really ever see that on a car with 4 seats. Well, you're seeing it now. And when you want to close the door, it's just the same process in reverse. The door closes itself, and it just looks so cool doing it. You can see the door comes back down and then fits right back in, and then it's closed. Take another look. You can see the door closing. It's just amazing to watch it happen. Far cooler than basically any other exotic car door operation that you'll ever see. Now, the cool thing about this car's door, aside from how it opens, is the fact that when it is open, it provides access to front and rear seats. Instead of having rear seat passengers have to put the front seat forward and climb in like they always do, you can see access to both rows of seats very easy here. You don't need 4 doors, you just need one giant door like this one, and that makes this pretty impressive, not only compared to other hypercars, but other 4-seat performance cars. You have all this space to climb inside. But if you have an eye for the details, you're probably wondering about this door because it's absolutely huge. So what happens if you're in like a low ceiling area? The door's gonna hit it. Or what happens if you come up to a low curb? The door will hit it down at the bottom. But Koenigsegg, of course, has thought of that. The production version of the Gemera will have sensors at the top and at the bottom of the door, and if it senses it's about to hit a low ceiling, it will stop opening so the door doesn't get damaged. Pretty good thinking. But anyway, next up, let's start talking interior quirks and features of the Gemera. I'm going to start with getting into the back seat, which is surprisingly easy. Because of that massive door opening, it's really easy to get in back here, and once you're in, you have a lot of space. I'm sitting back here and it's totally comfortable, and check this out. Here I am getting in with a me-sized person sitting in the front. He is comfortable in his position and I am comfortable in my position, and we're both sitting here front and back in this car. You can't do that in any other car of this performance range. That's pretty impressive to see. And you can see same deal over on the other side. Even with the steering wheel in place, the driver and a passenger behind the driver can sit in here. Tall adults should have no problem both climbing into this car and sitting in it comfortably, front or rear. Again, pretty special considering the performance level of this car. You don't see that in a LaFerrari. But next up, an interesting quirk. One of the ways they're able to make this interior so roomy is that the seats are very thin. You can see the entire seat is just maybe an inch or 2 thick, and that allows for better rear seat space and better overall interior room because the seats don't take up that much space. Part of the reason they're able to do this is the seat is just one individual carbon shell. Every single seat is, rather than all sorts of different parts kind of stuck together, you just have one thin little seat. Now, an interesting seat-related item, the fact that the door opens like this means there's no B-pillar in this car like there would be in basically everything else. And that meant that Koenigsegg had to figure out a place to put the seat belt for the front seats, and so they put it on the seat itself. You can see it's mounted right here. That's where your seat belt is. That's what you do when you don't have a B-pillar to mount the seat belt on. And another interesting result of having such a large door that covers both front and rear seats is that the window is shared both in front and in rear, and that includes the window part that goes down, which presumably is just this lower piece on the window itself. It goes down for front and rear passengers together, so front and rear will have to come to an agreement about whether or not they want the window down. You don't have individual front or rear windows in this car because you don't have individual front and rear doors. And speaking of the door, let's talk about the door panel up front. You have this beautiful yellow trim on the door panel up here, and this gorgeous accent lighting that's actually carried the entire way around the cabin, and it really, really looks nice. You also have a grab handle up here, like you would expect in most cars. It's carbon fiber in this car, of course, but those are your typical door panel items in this car. And interestingly, moving to the back half of the door panel, you can see about the same stuff back here. You have the same beautiful yellow trim in the back. You have the same gorgeous mood lighting going across, and you have the same grab handle situation back here, including in carbon fiber. It's all the same for rear passengers. That's kind of a theme in here. Koenigsegg wanted rear seat passengers to have the same luxuries, the same equipment, the same stuff as front seat passengers, and I'll show you other examples of that later on. But anyway, before I go over the back seat in this car, I want to talk about the quirks and features up front because there are some truly amazing ones in this car, starting with one of the first things you notice when you climb in up here, and that would be the steering wheel with its rather unorthodox gauge cluster mounted on the steering wheel itself. You can see it's like right behind the horn. So what happens when you turn the steering wheel and the gauge cluster is like upside down? Well, this happens. You can see the screen is actually programmed to stay upright no matter where you turn the steering wheel. You can turn it all the way around and that screen will remain pointed up, which is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It's like a stabilized, always upright gauge cluster screen, and that is an incredibly incredibly neat trick of this car, this gauge screen always staying in place no matter where the steering wheel is. Amazing. And there are some other amazing tricks in this car too. Take a look at the center of the dashboard. You have this camera that's rotating around. It's like a ball. It's like an orb, actually. It's just sort of spinning and spinning and spinning. That is pretty cool, but the coolest part is it's not mounted to anything. It's like magnetic. It's just floating there. You can see I tap it and can kind of mess with its orbit for a little while, but it just spins. It's like an orb going round and around at the front of your Koenigsegg. It's supposed to be like a dash cam, always sort of keeping watch when you have it parked or when you're driving or whatever, and there it is, just spinning in place. What a ridiculous feature. It is so bizarre and so cool. And speaking of cameras, you're sitting in the driver's seat and you look over to the passenger side to check your blind spot in the mirror, and you discover there are no mirrors in this car. Instead, you have a screen over there that shows you what a mirror would traditionally see. This little screen is broadcasting the mirror image. That is because on the door itself, you can see there's no mirror mounted there, but instead you have a camera mounted there, sticking off like a mirror would, but instead of a big bulky mirror, you have a camera, and then its image is being basically broadcast to the inside of the car. They have this on both the driver and passenger side. Now, why would you want to replace a simple item like a mirror with a camera? The primary reason is aerodynamics. A big bulky mirror on the outside kind of messes with your aero, but this little camera mounted on the outside is a lot smaller and a lot sleeker, and that allows you for better aerodynamics. Plus, it's not like this image in here is really any worse than a mirror. It's about the same. And next up, speaking of screens in this car, let's go back to the steering wheel, where instead of buttons on the steering wheel spokes, you have screens. They can be touched like any other touch screen, and they provide sort of a vibrating feedback to let you know that you've touched something, to acknowledge it. Over on the left side, you have your music controls. You can see next track, play, and also your volume control over there. This is a screen on the steering wheel, and the benefit here is it can be configurable. So depending on what you're adjusting, what screen you're on, those menu items can change, so you don't just get stuck with one set of steering wheel buttons. Now, also mounted on the steering wheel, you have your turn signals. They're on little thumb buttons right above the little screens. And on the bottom left, you have your headlight control, and on the bottom right, you have your windshield wiper control. So all of your main controls are mounted within relatively easy reach on the steering wheel. Now, over on the right, you have another little steering wheel screen that has a few more car functions, including your axle lifter system. You can press that and raise up the front of the car so you can clear steep angles like driveways. And you also have the ability to turn on this car's cruise control system here. I'm told by Koenigsegg that this car has a lot of the latest technology in terms of cruise control. You have adaptive cruise, and you even have lane keeping assistance. So if you start to drift out of your lane, it will automatically steer you back over like modern luxury cars. A lot of hypercars don't bother with those features. This one does. And next up, also in this vicinity, another interesting quirk is the cup holders. This car has 4 cup holders mounted in the front seat area, and it has another 4 cup holders mounted in the rear seat area. Koenigsegg says these cup holders are going to get bigger before the car reaches production, but the cool thing here is that they are heated and cooled. 1 heated and 1 cooled cup holder for each passenger in the car. So 2 heated and 2 cooled up front, 2 heated and 2 cooled in back. That is a pretty cool touch. Next up, let's move on to this screen in the center. First off, very large screen, reminiscent of Tesla and some of the other really large screens on the market, like the new Ram trucks. The screen has a lot of functionality, and it's very responsive, like you would expect it to be. Very sharp screen, and it does exactly what you'd expect when you tap it. Obviously, it's not fully functional, given that this is a pre-production car, but it does offer a lot of what it can do right now. In the upper left, you have this car's gauges, and it'll show you like your boost, how much power you're using, your G meter, that sort of thing. Right below that, you have a few interesting controls, your headlights, fog lights, your adaptive cruise control following distances here. And you can see they've made a Koenigsegg, the little logo in the adaptive cruise icon. Below that, you have the ability to control all of your doors and openings in this car. So if you tap the door button, the door will open, of course. If you tap the other side door will open. And same deal with the compartments in the front and rear. This is how you can control them all automatically. You can just tap each one of them and they will all open. But just in case this tapping system fails, it is worth pointing out that up front you have an emergency door release. In fact, on the door panel is printed emergency door release. You can break this open, I guess, and there will be some sort of release lever or tab that you can pull in order to get out, just in case your electronics have failed and you can't get out of your Koenigsegg. But anyway, continuing with the screen, on the bottom row you have a few different icons that you can use to control various items in the car. For instance, in the bottom left, you pull this up, that is your seat control. You push that, and then you can adjust the seat in various different ways, forward, backward, up, down. All of your seat controls are integrated into the screen. And obviously over on the bottom right, you have the same deal for the front passenger seat, so driver and passenger corresponding to their different sides on the screen. Now in the bottom left, next to the seat control, you have the settings menu. You tap that and you can adjust various car settings. Next, you have the window defogger, of course. Then after that, you have the temperature, the interior climate control temperature, and you can set that by pressing plus or minus. It will change when you tap it. You have the same deal over on the other side, of course, another temperature readout, and that's for the passenger side climate control temperature back here too. In the center, you have the fan speed, and you can adjust the fan speed to various different degrees based on how much climate control you want. And then you move over from there, you have the little sound icon that obviously adjusts the stereo volume. The phone icon, of course, pulls up your cell phone and then you can make a call. And of course, finally in the middle, you have this giant map. This allows you to look around. It's your navigation map for the car. You can get directions to places like any other nav screen. As you can see, very responsive to your touch, which is nice. Now in the upper right corner of this screen, you also have a few other icons. One is a camera. You press that, of course, and your camera system shows up. Obviously, this isn't the actual image of what we're seeing now, but in the production car, it will be. You also have a little music note icon up there. You tap that, and that pulls up your music player situation. So you can change the track, adjust the volume, whatever, if you're the passenger, and the driver could just reach onto the steering wheel and do it themselves. And next up, we move on to the back seat in the Gemera. And again, like I said, it is pretty comfortable back here, pretty nice, surprisingly roomy considering I'm sitting in the back of a hypercar with 1,700 horsepower that can do 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. I can't believe it doesn't require gymnastics to climb back here. Now, with that said, there is one piece getting into the back that's a little bit difficult, and that's this little yellow trim piece that you have to clear in order to get into the back seat. But like I mentioned, this is a pre-production car, and Koenigsegg told me they realized that this causes problems getting in and out, and the production version will have a thinner piece here. This is a good example of Koenigsegg attention to detail and figuring out little things like this that are going to make their customers' lives a lot easier, and then changing them before the car goes on sale. So it's interesting to see how a pre-production car evolves, and that's one of the places that they're going to make the change. Anyway, next up, other interesting items back here. Again, 4 cup holders, I already showed you, but it is interesting to see so many cup holders in a Koenigsegg, so much practicality in here. You can put drinks back here and heat or cool them depending on what you're looking for. Now, interestingly, I already showed you that the front seats are very thin in order to maximize interior space in this car. Worth noting, the rear seats are the same. You can see the rear seats are also this carbon fiber single piece. When you look closely at the backs of them, they're just like the front seats, also very thin. And again, that allows the rear seats to be pushed backwards as much as possible, again, providing more interior room in this car. Now, one interesting thing on these seats, instead of just having one cushion on the entire seat, or maybe 2 or 3, you have many different little yellow pads all stuck to the seat exactly where they think it would be the most comfortable, each one sort of tailor positioned to make the seat nice to sit in. But it's interesting to see like 10 or 12 different pads stuck to that carbon fiber piece that makes up the seat back. And of course, one of those yellow pads has this blue and yellow flag on it. That is, of course, the flag of Sweden. Koenigsegg is proudly a Swedish company, and the flag of Sweden makes it into the car, just to remind people of where Koenigsegg comes from. And next up, speaking of the seats, next to the seats, next to the shoulder, you have this piece, which is mounted sort of on this pillar here. What exactly is this? That would be a glass breakage tool, just in case this car has some issue where you can't get out, it's been in an accident and you need to climb out. You can pull this tool out and then use the end to break open the glass in this car in order to climb out. They've placed that in the back seat on both sides so that you're able to get out if need be, if you're in some sort of emergency. That is an interesting feature. You don't see an integrated glass breakage tool in too many cars, but it's in this one for safety. And And next up, another obviously notable item back here is this screen. The giant screen in the center back here is the same size as the one in front. Like I said, Koenigsegg wanted rear passengers to have the same amenities, the same luxuries as front passengers. So the seats are the same, the cup holders, they're the same, heated, cooled, the same number, the interior room is the same, and they have the same size screen. You can see this is the home screen back here, and it has quite a few interesting controls. For one, you tap this little button in the corner and that turns on your heated seat, and you can see I can turn on various different heated seat levels. The next button will open or close the doors, and when you tap it, it gives you the option of lowering or raising the window or of opening or closing the door. You can pick. Now, I mentioned earlier that front and rear passengers would have to come to some sort of agreement about the window being down, and that is true. Rear passengers can control it on the screen. Front passengers have little window switches on the ceiling next to the rear view mirror that they can control the window, but either way, they both have controls, front and rear, for the same window, so there may be some arguments that arise. Anyway, next up, continuing to move on with these icons back here, you also have a temperature control in back. Same as the one in front, you can press plus or minus to raise or lower the temperature, pretty standard. Next up, you have a fan control back here. Interestingly, it goes 0 to 100. You can choose any fan speed from 0 to 100. Most cars have like 5 or 6 different fan speeds, or just low, medium, and high. This thing has 100 different fan speeds. Might be overkill. That may not end up making it to the production model. Now, next up, this next icon on the screen is rather interesting. These 4 squares. You tap that, and it pulls up various different apps that come with the car, but my favorite is one is marked Play, and it has like a video game controller. Now, you press it, and it says that this app isn't yet ready, but can't you not wait until it is? I am very excited to see what kind of games you can play in the back of your Koenigsegg. That will no doubt be interesting. Rear passengers can play games back here. Moving on from that, you have an icon for your phone. Obviously, you connect your phone and you can use it here. And you have a volume control back here as well. Now, 2 other interesting items with this rear screen. In the upper right, you press Car, which is, of course, the Koenigsegg logo. You press that, and then cameras appear, front and rear, and you can see where you are on the road, I guess. And you can also check your tire temperature and pressure from the back seat using this car menu in the rear screen. That's pretty cool. You also have a menu in the upper left. You can press gauges, and that will pull up this car's gauge screen, and you can see how much power you're using, torque, all that stuff. Again, very interesting. A lot of different options and features for the rear seat passengers. One other cool item worth noting in back is on the ceiling, you have this giant sunroof. It's horizontal, sort of spans the entire length of the car. It doesn't open. You can't really see it in the front, but when you're sitting in back, it really helps make the whole experience seem more airy and open. You can see out the windows, front, side, but also the roof, and that is frankly a pretty cool look, and I like to see that. I wonder if they'll make it tintable on the production car like some other vehicles have, but for right now it's just a cool little roof panel, and it definitely enhances the rear seat experience. And next up, moving on to the outside of this car, there are a lot of quirks and features to cover out here, but I want to start with the name Gemera. This is a Swedish word meaning to give more, and the thinking was that this car gives more in terms of not only power and performance, but also space and roominess and the ability to carry around your family. And so that's where the name comes from. Now, from this angle, you can also see the wheels. These are carbon fiber wheels, 21 inches in the front, 22 inches in the back, very light wheels. These are going to be optional in this car, but they look great. And of course, you want to go for carbon fiber if you want the latest possible wheel for your Gemera. And next up, let's talk exterior lighting in this car. You can see, even with the taillights in this static state, they look pretty cool. It is a very distinctive taillight design, but it gets even more distinctive when you put on the turn signal. Take a look now. The turn signal is this beautiful sweeping design going across the entire taillight assembly, and it looks fantastic. I really like how that looks. But frankly, even cooler than the turn signal in back is the one in front. Right now, you can see the headlight with its sort of like running lights on, but turn on the turn signal and take a look. It sweeps across the running light in orange. It just looks so cool and very distinctive and very special. Now, one other interesting thing with this lighting here, you can see right below the lights, there's a little vent. This is actually the brake cooling duct. They've integrated it into the headlight area to funnel air onto the brakes to cool them down, and that means you don't need an extra brake cooling duct somewhere else on the outside, which would make the design, a little bit more complex, a little busier. Maybe it wouldn't look as good as integrating it into the headlight area. That is a pretty cool idea. And next up, since I'm up front, let's talk about the front compartment. You will open it surely by pressing a button on your Koenigsegg key fob, but you open it up and it opens automatically and reveals a cargo area. And that noise you hear is in the pre-production car. It will not be in the actual production car, which will be silent when it opens the front trunk, worth pointing out. But anyway, you're under here and you can see there is a piece of fitted luggage. You have a small storage compartment and a piece of fitted luggage that perfectly fits inside. Keep that piece of fitted luggage in mind. I say that because next we move around to the rear of the Gemera, where you have another opening compartment that again opens up automatically. You open it and it reveals two interesting things. One is the engine, which I will get to in a second, but the other is a cargo compartment back here where you have 3 more pieces of the same fitted luggage that you saw up front. This is important because you then get 4 pieces of fitted luggage of identical size to match the 4 seats in the car. So that makes sense. 4 luggage, 4 seats, and it works perfectly. Now with this luggage, you can see 2 important things here. One is that each piece is perfectly sized to fit exactly in this car and maximize the cargo space, frankly. The other thing you'll notice is that you have names on each piece of luggage. Each name is one of Christian von Koenigsegg's family members. He is, of course, the founder of the company. He has 4 members of his family, and he wanted to take them all in a 4-seat car with individual pieces of luggage, and so that's why you have a 4-seater, 4 pieces of luggage with his family names on them. And next up, the other thing we have back here is the engine, which shares this rear compartment with the cargo area. So you gotta figure, to get the engine and cargo area into this little compartment, the engine must be pretty small, and indeed it is. It's only a 3-cylinder, although it's a 2-liter 3-cylinder, which is fairly large for a 3-cylinder engine, but it's a 3-cylinder nonetheless. However, Koenigsegg refers to this engine as the tiny friendly giant because this engine makes 600 horsepower and about 450 pound-feet of torque, an unbelievable number for a 3-cylinder engine. Absolutely crazy. And that isn't enough for this car. 600 horsepower would make it fairly powerful, but this car has more than that in the form of 3 electric motors that add additional power. The total is about 1,700 total horsepower at peak power, which is an unbelievable figure, and around 2,600 pound-feet of torque, a truly earth-shattering number, and that's what helps send this car from 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. Now, you might be wondering, why use a gas engine at all? So many modern performance cars are switching to full electric. But there are a few good reasons why you might still want a gas engine like this car has. For one, it saves weight. If you try to get 1,700 horsepower out of electric motors, you'll need a lot of batteries, an enormous amount, and that will add a lot of weight. But if you have this small 3-cylinder engine providing about 1/3 of that power, you save some weight versus having to stick in all those batteries. It also saves size. They're trying to make this car a 4-seater to maximize interior room. Again, electric motors, lots of batteries. It makes it more difficult to do from a packaging perspective, and so the gas engine helps give you a little bit more size back to make the car roomier. The final thing worth noting back here, you can see in the back there are 2 exhaust-looking pipes in the back of this car. Those are exhaust pipes, actually, for the gas engine. They come out right next to the engine itself, sort of high up on the car, and you can see that's where they are. So you don't have your exhaust at a traditional location, but then again, pretty much nothing about this car is traditional, so it makes sense. And finally, moving on to the back of this car, I want to talk about exterior styling for a second, starting in back where you have this beautiful carbon fiber diffuser back here, like you would expect from a true hypercar. It looks great, and I'm sure it's functional as well. As for the styling on the rest of the car, frankly, I think this car looks fantastic. I don't know that I've ever seen a 4-seater car pull off the true hypercar look quite as well as this one does. It's a pretty impressive feat of packaging, actually, to be able to have an interior as large as this and as accessible as this and still look like a hypercar, a supercar, megacar, whatever you want to call it, like it should. And that is a really, really impressive feat. I think Koenigsegg did an amazing job pulling off the beauty and also the aggressiveness of this car without sacrificing for rear seats like so many brands frankly have to in order to make practicality work. It really is quite an impressive feat to see this much practicality and this much hypercarness. And I can't wait till the day that these are actually in production on the road, combining that practicality and that performance. And so that's the Koenigsegg Gemera. This is an incredible car, really amazing, and a total departure from other hypercars and from other Koenigsegg models, and frankly, from other sedans. It's really been incredible to be able to check it out and show you all of its interesting quirks and features, and I can't wait to drive the Gemera when it goes into production. This is the Koenigsegg Gemera. That's as far as we got that time.